Yeah, Roseland, where 2 kids died this past week and the week before. 2 young kids from fairly large families in a not-so-young neighborhood. This has been a big news story, a tragedy covered by media from all over the world. But there's a lot more to this drama than what you've seen, although we know you've seen and read a lot.
You knew Shavon, yeah?
She's my niece.
She's your niece? What's your name, man?
Ida Falls.
What was she like?
What was Shavon like? She was a very cheerful young lady, beautiful, outgoing. She was a good girl, real good girl, full of life, and she loved to come outside and play. She loved to do hair. You know, she was beginning to start doing hair, and she loved to see beauty. She liked the likes of beautiful things. She wasn't a bad girl. He said, somebody's daughter is laying down here hurt. So, you know, I don't care who child it is, I want to help. So I ran out the back door and ran right here, and I still didn't know it was my niece laying down there. And so my brother, he ran out the door, and he ran right there, and then I'm pretty sure he said he knew it was his daughter. I'm pretty sure that my brother knew what she had on, her clothing. So he ran and he looked at her and he put his hand on her and felt her pulse. So he said, she still have a pulse. So he said, call the police. The police were there so quick. I mean, they was here on arrival. And so the police, they came and put white gloves on and they felt my niece, you know. But I knew, you know, she wasn't going to make it.
I just wanted to know what you think, what kind of guy he was.
Hey, man, he was a little kid.
He was a kid?
Yeah.
When you say he was, how old was he?
He was 11.
11. What was he like when he was a little kid?
He was a sweet little kid. He wasn't violent, and he wasn't bad. The way they got it, the way they talking about now, that's not true. It's not true.
Like when you say...
Every time somebody says something, they change it around. He was this and he was that, and I know that he was not.
Well, what was he like then? In other words, when he was growing up, like, did he have a sense of humor?
Yes, he did.
How did you find out that your nephew was killed?
What do you mean how I found out he was killed?
Did you get a phone call?
No. They just brought the picture here.
If I was to see this young man on the street, I've never seen him, right? What would I see? What did he look like? Was he a tall fellow? Was he short?
He was this short. He was very short. To be his age, he was real short.
Was he a bright fellow? Was he a smart guy?
Yeah, he was very bright and very smart. He can draw, he can read, he can write.
What kind of food did he like? I mean, was he...
He loved food, gyros. You know, he ate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When Mama had barbecues, he ate that. He ate a lot.
Why was his nickname Yummy?
Because he loved cookies.
His nickname was Yummy because he loved cookies.
Yeah.
What was his favorite cookie?
Chocolate chip. Oreo. You know them chocolate chips in the blue bag? That's what he liked.
What's your name?
My name is Gloria.
Gloria, did he have, when he was growing up, did he have any heroes? Did he have any sports heroes?
He liked a lot of cars. He liked to fix on cars and stuff like that.
Did he ever talk about what he wanted to be when he was growing up?
Not to my knowledge. Maybe to my mother, but not to my knowledge.
How long did you know him?
Since I've been staying around here.
How long was that?
About a year.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What was he like?
Bad.
Bad? Like, when you say bad, what do you mean?
Fighting, stealing, breaking into people's houses.
I think you should have answered the question.
Yeah?
Shut up! Come on, open up that door.
Did you ever see, the police coming to his house?
Every other day.
Every other day the police would come into his house?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? When you found out that he was killed, right? What did you think?
I mean, it shocked me. He shouldn't have got killed like that. I mean, he didn't have to die the way he was killed, but that's the life you live. That's what happened.
All of you children that are standing here, looking down, take a good look, and I want you to say within your heart that you'll never end up like Robert. Okay? Cry if you will. Make up your mind that you will never let your life end in tragedy like this. Okay?
They told him he would be safe with them. They promised to get him out of the city. He only wanted to go home, the boy said. As he climbed into the vehicle and ducked out of sight, he was too young to die. But to the 16-year-old behind the wheel, the kid lying on the floorboard wedged against the back seat knew too much to live. Nobody in the car, not the driver, his brother, or the doe-eyed boy, was aware of the political winds that would engulf them. It could not likely call the names of those who would use their lives as fodder for the sweeping legislation being pushed in Washington. They well understood, though, the callous of the streets, where living was harder than dying, and any day could well be their last, and that some secrets were better left buried. The sedan crept along the East 108th Street and came to a sudden stop at South Doplin Avenue, near the opening of a railway underpass. The boy was ordered out of the vehicle and into a vacant tunnel. As he stepped forward into the darkness, there were no tears. His killers would later testify. There were no shouts, no wails, no final pleas for his life as he indistinctively faced a wall that was covered with gang graffiti and dropped to his knees knowing these moments would be his last. The .25 caliber bullets tore through the back of his small skull, his brain matter flung amongst the dirt and the shards of broken glass. Chicago police discovered the body minutes later, just after midnight, crumpled up over a puddle. It was an assassination, a hit ordered by Chicago's Black Disciples in an attempt to silence the potential informant. The victim was 11 years old, wearing a Tasmanian Devil t-shirt, an elementary school dropout known as Yummy because he loved cookies. Robert Sandifer would be soon featured on the cover of Time magazine as his brief life but violent death, informed decades of domestic public policy. Sandifer was more than one of 900 victims in Chicago that was murdered in 1994. As the nation was grappling with what lawmakers said was continued a rise in violent crime committed by juvenile offenders, the boy in the back of the car would soon come to symbolize all that was said to be wrong in Black America. Robert Yummy Sandifer, March 12, 1983 to September 1, 1994, was an American street gang member from Chicago, Illinois. Sandifer's murder by fellow gang members in Chicago generated national attention, resulting in him appearing on the cover of Time magazine in September 1994. Nicknamed Yummy because of his love for cookies, standing 4'6", Sandifer was a young member of a street gang called the Black Disciples. After committing a murder, arson, and armed robbery, he was murdered by fellow gang members who feared he could become an informant and he was attracting too much attention toward their activities. On August 28, 1994, a gang boss put a 9mm pistol in Yummy's hand and directed him to shoot members of a rival gang, the Gangster Disciples. The boy carried out his assignment that evening, wounding 2 enemy teens in an ambush shootings within a block of his home on West 107th Place. In the second attack, a stray bullet found a bystander, Shavon Dean, 14, who was killed. Witnesses and victims pointed the shooter for the police, saying Yummy did it. Assault and homicide by a prepubescent boy would have not necessarily impelled Robert to nationwide infamy in 1994. When cynical crack cocaine dealers in many cities sought to insultate themselves from justice by using kids to do their dirty work, no, Yummy ascended to national news because of what came next. A Black Disciples crew leader reckoned that Robert was likely to squeal under police interrogation. Gang tasked another member, Craig Hardaway, 16, with nipping that possibility in the bud. After 3 days in hiding, Robert surfaced briefly in Roseland late August 31st and was swept away in an Oldsmobile, a loaner from the gang's leader, Kenny Stump, by Hardaway and his brother, Derek, 14. Promised him a safe haven outside the city, but the trip was over in a mile. As the younger brother sat in the idling car, Craig Hardaway walked Robert into an isolated pedestrian tunnel beneath the train track at the eastern boundary of the neighborhood. Derek Hardaway later said he heard 3 shots just before Craig scrambled back to the car. A passerby found the body at 12:22 a.m. on September 1st. Detectives noted that Robert was murdered with ice-cold efficiency of a seasoned hitman, 2 .25 caliber slugs in the back of the head. Times headline summarized his life with an adept caption, "So young to kill, so young to die." What you've got here is a kid who was made and turned into a sociopath by the time he was 3 years old, Patrick Murphy, Chicago's public guardian, said. He was a free-range kid. He was raised superficially by his grandmother, following abandonment by his mother, a prostitute, and his father, a drug felon in prison in Wisconsin. He rarely attended school. Chicago Mayor Richard M. Daley claimed that Robert had slipped through the cracks, but that really wasn't true. Child welfare authorities were all too familiar with Robert, who had a long record as a child delinquent. Caseworkers had chronicled his physical and mental well-being for years. Robert's body bore dozens of scars from torture and beatings, a total of 49 according to his autopsy report, including cigarette burns on his neck, arms, and snake-like wounds from an electric cord whippings. A psychological exam at the state shelter months before his murder concluded that Robert was angry, discouraged, and confused. He has a sense of failure that has infiltrated almost every aspect of his inner self, the examiner wrote. He felt validated as a member of the Black Disciples, but the gang pushed his law-breaking from petty to grand. He was in police custody about 30 times in the last 18 months of his life, including for 23 felonies. He was judged too young and vulnerable for confinement to juvenile homes, so he was released time and time again to his overwhelmed grandmother, whose chaotic house was crammed with as many as 10 children and 30 grandchildren at a time. His murder was no mystery. Eyewitnesses saw the Hadaway brothers drive off with Robert 45 minutes before the boy was killed. Derek, in custody just 8 hours later, confessed to his role as wheelman and fingered Craig as the shooter. Their involvement came as a shock to their parents, a teacher, and a computer engineer. Both brothers were honor students who seemed designed for college. Like Robert himself, the Hardaways became exhibits in the juvenile mania of the 1990s. 930 homicides, many of them, including Robert, his victim Shavon Dean, were the result of gang violence. This year, the city has paced on a record half that number. The Hardaways were charged as adults, convicted of murder, and sent to prison on long sentences. 60 years for Craig, 45 for Derek. No gang leader was charged, seemingly justifying the strategy of exploiting children. Since the 90s, various court rulings have prompted reconsideration of prison terms for juveniles. Derek was paroled in 2016, and Craig will be eligible to apply for release in 2024 under Illinois' laws. A quarter century after the case made national headlines, it lingers like a bad dream in Chicago. In all of the coverage that day, no one talked about what might have been done to prevent the tragedy. There is no mention of long-term mental health services or other interventions that might have made a difference for the Sandifer family, even though it was clear to anyone that encountered him that the boy's life was in peril. His mother, Lorena, had over 30 arrests for drug possession and prostitution. Already in his grandmother's custody at 3, Sandifer had to quit school by the age of 8 and reportedly began breaking into houses. Time and time after, he was sent back to his grandmother's house, where as many as 19 other children lived. His grandmother, Janie Fields, lost custody of the Sandifer children in 1993. Sandifer ran away from a children's shelter the year before he died, and at 11 years old, he largely lived on the street. The damage he suffered at the hands of relatives, as well as documented through the years. At the time of his death, the coroner noted nearly 50 wounds in various stages of healing, including cigarette burns. Stretched out on the medical examiner's slab, the boy measured only 4 feet and 6 inches. His grandmother's fight to keep him alive was over. 400 people gathered at his funeral in 1994. His siblings crowded around his casket as Miss Janie held his name. Washington lawmakers would point to his life as evidence as they were doing the right thing, that the crime bill was desperately needed to save the staunch tide of the violent crime. Notwithstanding current campaign promises, 25 years after Yummy was found in that tunnel, the legal landscape remains largely unchanged. The cost goes well beyond the next election. The price will be another generation of Yummies, children written off, locked up, or dead. Until we give full recognition to the problem that stands before us that continues to unfold, especially and specifically for juvenile offenders, his ghost will continue to haunt us.